bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
It is a mini buy Monday here on Birds 365. You got Mac and Mac, John McMullen, and Jody McDonald here to hang and talk football with you for the next 2 hours. We'll certainly talk about an Eagle game that was played. It was played a good couple of days ago. It seems like it's in the rearview mirror, but we'll certainly give enough time to that. But look at what went down in the National Football League yesterday and look ahead. Damn, Johnny Mac, it's still more than a week away before the Eagles play. Not till Monday night against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All of a sudden, we're like dying for Eagles football to get here, and then it goes back away again for a too long a period of time because of the schedule makers.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a super mini buy because you get the extra day on top of it. Yeah, I don't like the timing of it. You'd prefer to have that mini buy later in the season, but it is what it is. And, the Eagles can take advantage of it. They're 2-0. They persevered, but there's a lot of things to clean up. It's a good 2-0 for a coaching staff because, not a lot of style points as a lot of people want, and you can nitpick and do all that kind of stuff. And Nick Sirianni even said that after the game on Thursday night. He said, you can kind of, it's easier to correct things when you win. People are they're not surly, they're not upset, their mood isn't ruined. So you can do some different things as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, this team keeps persevering and the expectations, that's what I say. That's what I'm concerned about. And I think about the dust up on the sideline between A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts. And how Nick handled that and how AJ handled that. That tells me this team's wound a little bit tight. Now, Jalen, Mr. 25-year-old, he handles it the correct way. And if everybody was on the same page with Jalen, including the head coach who's 17 years older, wouldn't be an issue. But he got all salty and surly and things. It tells me they're wound a little bit tight. That's how I take it.
And if you're wound tight, it could lend itself to bad things and bad results. And like you said, they're 2-0. It might not be the most impressive 2-0. We'll look around the league at some of the other games yesterday and the teams that, like the Eagles, are 2-0, and they might have had more impressive wins. But the bottom line is standings are all the same. They don't have a style points column on the standing page. It just wins and losses, and the Eagles are 2-0
college. You don't gotta impress people in a room, in a boardroom. Just get a win or a loss or a tie.
And the Eagles have gotten 2 wins so far. But let me ask you about easier on the coaches because of a win and again, maybe not impressive wins and the like. They can put in more time. They can spend more time down at the NovaCare complex. They can put in more work. The players can't because of collective bargaining rules and the way the Eagles have laid out their game plan as to how they prep for an entire season well in advance. And I believe that both Brian Johnson and Sean Desai probably did put in some extra time during this mini bye week because not perfect efforts by the offense or the defense the first 2 weeks. But the players are home watching football these past couple of days. Hope they enjoyed themselves.
Probably not. Certainly not Fletcher. That's a great question. He does not watch football. A lot of players don't. Some do. Some don't. Some do. But I wouldn't count on them sitting in front of the TV for 10 hours like the rest of us.
If they don't, that's certainly their choice. And if they don't believe they can learn by watching others, okay, fine. I would tend to think that can't hurt and might be a good idea, but I'm not going to tell Fletcher Cox that, or at least not to his face. What is their schedule going to look like this week? They don't play till Monday night. They had the days off because they played on Thursday. Are they going to get any extra time at the facility? How do you work out the little kinks in a 2-0 start, but kinks just the same?
Yeah, it's going to be a normal Monday night game week pretty much, and they'll get back. So they have some extra time from that standpoint as well because they have the extra day. But, it's going to be if it were a Sunday game, it would be completely normal. The Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Nick's going to talk today, but it's virtual. And then they're going to get back on the field Wednesday for an actual practice. So not that much different than a normal week. Yeah, it's more when you talk about these buys, as you mentioned, it's more about extra time for the coaching staff to try to, figure out what they want to fix, what they're not happy with, things like that. And then you try to get it done with the players as best you can. But yeah, it's not drastically different. As Monday at 8:00, 8:07. I do not have the official schedule, so typical. But I do know Nick is going to talk today, and they're going to be back on the practice field Wednesday. So it's not that all that different from a typical week.
Understood. But hopefully the coaches do get some extra time to work through some of the things. One of the things you can ask Nick Sirianni today, I can pretty much assure you're not going to get a complete and full answer because Nick believes in the competitive advantage. Eagles came out of the game on Thursday night a little banged up, and the biggest injury is Avonte Maddox, who at least people are speculating has a torn pec. And if that's the case, it's going to be a lengthy injury for Avonte Maddox. And that hits home with the Eagles because that's a spot where they don't have a given backup guy to come in and play. Mario Goodrich, young guy, got beat a couple of times in the game on Thursday night after Maddox went out. They used James Bradbury there in preseason practices just to give him a look at it and give him a feel for the position, and maybe certain matchups during the year they would have moved him in there. Johnny Mac, we're 99.9% sure Maddox is out for this week, and it's probably going to be longer than that. What's the Eagles' slot cornerback position going to look like?
Yeah, I'm on the phone with Chris Harris right now. It's interesting. That's a very good player, aging player. I'm starting to think about the template of Linval, Joseph, and to a lesser extent, and Ndamukong Suh last season when they had multiple injuries at defensive tackle. People forget the backup was Zach McPherson. They lost him in the preseason. So they're down 2 nickel corners, and it's most likely Avonte's done for the season. So this is long term. And you have another option. You have a number of options. You could like if this were a typical NFL team, an 8-9, parity driven NFL, blah, blah, blah. They're going to win some, they're going to lose some. I'd say just go with Goodrich and try to develop the young player. But this is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And I don't think you can just sit back and assume. And I know a lot of people are going to bring up the Bradbury stuff, but to me, boy, that makes no sense. You're taking an all-pro player out of a position that he's an all-pro player at to move him inside. You'll be a little bit better than you would be with a Goodrich, but then you're affecting two positions, whether it's Josh Jobe on the outside, and you start to go, what are we doing here with these moving chairs? You can move Justin Evans to the nickel. He played the nickel last season with the Saints as an in-house kind of option. So there's a lot of ways you can go, but the easiest way is to pick up the phone. Now, I don't know how much Chris Harris has left, but I did. I said, well, why is he not? He's 34 years old, so he just might have nothing left. But he did say back in May that he was specifically going to wait and try to figure out a Super Bowl contender. Well, here it is. If he were serious, this is it. I mean, to me, it's easy, and we'll see how the Eagles go about it. Again, maybe he has nothing left. I don't know, but he was a damn good player for a long time and one of the best nickel corners in this league. I would certainly, at the bare minimum, kick the tires on that one.
I would not be surprised. Well, first of all, I think he was being honest and serious, and he just decided, listen, do I want to go through a preseason if I don't have to? No, I'll just wait here, and I'll be ready. I'll keep myself in the shape that I need. I need to believe in. But maybe he's enjoying the downtime, and maybe he wants to wait till somewhere near midseason and says, when he picks up the phone, to Howie Roseman, hey, you want to come to Philadelphia? I get back to you about 5-6 weeks. Sound good to you? Hey, I'll be checking it right about mid-season there. I want to get Halloween with my kids out of the way first. But November 1st, give me a buzz back, and maybe we can talk. You never know. You throw out a very good name. A guy, as you say, has been a outstanding nickel corner and is probably on his last legs, but you never know. We thought that Linval Joseph could have been done too, and he came in and did a nice job for the Eagles last year. So wouldn't discount it, but until I hear that he is interested in joining a team right away and getting up to speed right away and be able to play right away, yeah, he's a guy who's on the outside looking in. Good idea, but you got to get some details on it as to whether he wants to play it or not. Let me ask about Avonte Maddox, because I've been a fan from the time that they drafted him. I thought he was a good pick. Where they got him, the talent that he was, he works his way into the starting lineup for the Eagles, plays well enough that merits one of the Howie ahead of time extensions, so they make a commitment to him. And the guy plays just too physical for his own good. He's not a big guy, but he's a physical player and a smart player, but he also puts his body at risk, and they pay a price almost every single year with some kind of injury to Avonte Maddox. The Eagles make a mistake by extending him with a contract if Avonte Maddox is going to continue to miss significant time year in and year out?
I mean, maybe in hindsight, I mean, that could have been the last play you ever see of Avonte Maddox in Philadelphia. If you're remember, they signed Isaiah Rodgers, who's a nickel. It'd be nice if he could play, but he's suspended for the year. He might be the long-term answer from their perspective as the nickel corner. And we'll have to see how that shakes out. He's got to stay out of trouble. Number one, he's got to stop gambling. So who knows if he ever, but that's a talented player. And it was an interesting signing when the Eagles did it. Now you have another injury with Avonte Maddox. Yeah, I mean, best ability is availability. And I'm, I've said that for a while as well. He's so physical at his size, and he throws his body around. And the injuries have started to pile up. So the Eagles understand it, realize it. Who knows, maybe Mario Goodrich steps in and plays well and starts to develop, and maybe he's in the mix. And I mentioned Rodgers for next year, and you can save some cap space by moving on. So there's a possibility that they go in a different direction after this season. No doubt about it. One name I should have mentioned, Josiah Scott, who's on Pittsburgh's practice squad. They might, but he's on the injured list right now, so he's not healthy. So
Is
that
he?
wouldn't be.
I didn't even know that.
That wouldn't be immediate. He's on practice squad injured list, which is different from IR. But I don't know what kind of injury. I talked to somebody in Pittsburgh. They don't know because that's not stuff you have to admit on the official injury report. So I don't know when he's going to be ready, if he's going to be ready. But obviously, it's not going to excite people, but knows the defense, obviously knows, played competent at times. A lot of different avenues they can go. But next year, yeah, I mean, you have to start seriously discussing that could have been his last play in Philadelphia.
Yeah, which is sad because I'm an Avante Maddox fan. I like the player a great deal, but he got to be able to stay on the field. And he just seems to find injuries every single year. And this might be the biggest one of them all if he's going to miss the entire season. And as you point out, John, it could be the final play that we see of Avante Maddox. Hopefully not. Hopefully he's back before the year is out. Hopefully he's back for a playoff run. But he's going to be out for a significant amount of time here in season. And Eagles are going to have to come up with some kind of replacement. So we gave you a couple potential options to keep your eyes on. A lot of other Eagle news we need to get to, like the fact that they do have some rookies that they're not playing. You mentioned moving Edmonds down into the slot perchance.
Evans.
Evans, excuse me. What did I say?
Edmonds,
excuse me. Edmonds will surely be getting some time at safety, more time. If that's the case, we're assuming that Reed Blankenship is back this week. We gonna see Sidney Brown at all? I went over this last Friday with you after the game when I saw how few snaps Nolan Smith played and how few snaps Sidney Brown played. When did the Eagles get overly nervous about playing rookies? Is this a Sean Desai thing? Because I think they've been giving.
Well, they're not nervous with Jalen Carter.
Yeah,
but he's a little bit different. I mean, he's different. He's with. I mean, you saw it last year with Nakobe Dean. They didn't play Nakobe. Now they're very. It's a similar thing. Now the problem is. I think people overstate Kaiser White's impact on this defense last season. He was good. To me, he was an average player. And could they have gotten more work for him? Yeah, they probably could have, but they felt that they were a Super Bowl contender. And why fix what isn't broken? And they turned out to be right. They made the Super Bowl. In the case of Sidney Brown, look, I talk about this scheme all the time. I do not like this scheme. I hope Eagles fans watched around the NFL yesterday with the Eagles not playing. So many teams play this bare front, 50 front, 40 front, Big Fangio style defense. The blown coverages on the back end. I do not like it. But the main goal of this scheme is to limit explosive plays. And when you have young players who are susceptible to blowing more coverages than even, say, the Eagles, who didn't blow a lot of coverage last year, but they blew coverages at the biggest moment. But overall, compared to other teams, they don't blow a lot of coverages. They're concerned about giving up big plays, and they have a trust issue with safeties and corners and young players from that perspective. Here's the problem I have. They don't have great talent at safety with the exception of, I think Reed's got a good chance, ironically, as an undrafted kid to be a really good player. But other than that, I'm not impressed with, I thought Justin Evans kind of described what I said about Kaiser White. He's fine. He's average. He looks like a competent player to me, but the upside, the CJ Gardner-Johnson playmaker upside, I'll describe it as, is not there. Same thing with Terrell Edmonds. He's obviously competent. He started for 5 years in this league, but the playmaking upside's not there. Sidney Brown's got so much more explosiveness and burst. I would have played him, but they're worried about giving up explosive plays and mistakes, and they don't think he's ready.
I'm thinking maybe this week that against a quarterback like Baker Mayfield, and hey, I'm not putting Baker Mayfield down. He's played 2 winning
2-0
weeks in a row.
Bucks. It's 2-0 versus 2-0, Jody.
He
It's
threw
a heavyweight battle.
almost 300 yards yesterday, and yeah, you just make sure Mike Evans isn't the one who's going to beat you. I'm not afraid of the Bucks with explosive plays, so this would be a week that maybe I'd try and get Cindy Brown in there. We're still a week away from finding out if that is the case because the Eagles don't play till Monday. But everybody else in the NFL, well, I shouldn't say that because we have not one, but 2 Monday night games tonight. Annoying.
That is annoying.
We'll do a lot of recap of what went on around the National Football League next. Our buddy Jeff Kerr, CBSSports.com, who covers the entire league, will jump on with us. We'll surely talk Eagles with him, but also the rest of the National Football League in week number 2. Steve, don't call me Steve. Jeff Kerr, NBA Coach of the Year, Steve Kerr. I wish I could give Kerr that kind of payoff. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, coming up next with us here on Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You've got the Mac guys, McMullen and McDonald, here on Birds 365. We're joined by our Monday guy, Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com. Did you get out to a game yesterday, or did you sit in front of the TV like the rest of us with remote control in hand, going from game to game to game to game to game?
I had the 65-inch big screen down in the basement, Jody Mac, with 3 TVs all lined up. I got to use my NFL Sunday ticket package yesterday, and it was glorious.
Nice. What is it? YouTube now. YouTube TV.
Yep.
That's the way we got to go. I'm glad. I'm usually at a game. But yesterday, yeah, it was a little bit weird to sit and watch everybody. Before I get into that with you, Jeff, I do want to bring up the Eagles first, and I want to bring up the Avonte Maddox injury. Jody and I were talking about to start the show. So if I give you just keep moving forward with Mario Goodrich, move Bradbury into the slot, play Josh Jobe outside, move Justin Evans into the slot, play Terrell Edmonds, or just pick up the phone and call Chris Harris. What are you doing, Jeff Kerr? You're Howie Roseman.
I'm picking up the phone and calling Chris Harris. No disrespect to Mario Goodrich, but he was picked on a lot on Thursday night, and he will get better, but the quarterbacks the Eagles facing are going to target him. Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, and I know a lot of his damage was done after it was 27-7, but you're going to pick on Mario Goodrich a lot. They picked on Josh Jobe a lot Thursday night. And these are young players, but if I'm the Eagles, I got to get a veteran in there. You got to get some depth at slot cornerback. There's no doubt about it.
Johnny, do us a favor while I ask Jeff the next question here. See if you can get last year's PFF rankings.
Yeah, it wasn't good. Wasn't good for Chris.
Yeah. Again, at one point, he was a really good slot corner. I don't know if he's got anything left in the tank. I just ran this by John. Let me bring this up with you again, something we discussed in segment number 1. Sidney Brown can't seem to get on the field for any snaps. That's even with Reed Blankenship out of the lineup. The Eagles seem scared and or nervous to put him out there. Nolan Smith has gotten like 13 snaps in 2 weeks and hasn't played at all. And I'm not buying into they're protecting his shoulder thing, because they're playing him on almost every special teams coverage unit that you can. So if he's got a bad shoulder, then you just sit him, you deactivate him, you protect him. You can't say we're protecting him and then play him on every single special teams. Is it just, as John suggested, the Fangio defense? Is this Sean Desai being a little bit more nervous to play rookie players? Why do you think two guys who, again, going with what John tells me and all the other guys who are there every single day for the preseason practices, flashed at practice, made some big plays, showed up, showed off, they can't get on the field here? Why is that for the Birds' first 2 games?
Well, my honest opinion is because they played 2 games in 5 days. And I don't think Sidney Brown was ever in the plans to play the first 2 games, just because you play that first game in New England, you have a quick turnaround, and they barely practiced last week, if they really practiced at all. So you're setting a game plan up, not just for New England, but for Minnesota too. Well, it's hard to get Sidney Brown or Nolan Smith into that so-called game plan. I mean, now Nolan Smith did play a little bit against the Patriots. He was in on a couple third downs late in the fourth quarter. But overall, I did not expect either of them to play much. I didn't expect Tyler Steen to play at all. The only one I expected to see significant time was Jalen Carter, and you can see why. But I would bet at least Sidney Brown gets a lot more of a look going into Monday night.
Yeah, extra time. Who knows? This might be the week to take the shrink wrap off Sidney Brown. It is a road game, though. But I think, to Jody's point, it's different. They have no problem playing Jalen Carter because Jalen Carter's Jalen Carter. I think there's tremendous depth on the edge, so that kind of explains Nolan Smith. But Brown, I got trouble with because they don't have the kind of talent that they have at the edge with safety. And I think he could help this team. So we'll see how quickly they can get him up to speed. You were talking about the games yesterday, though, Jeff. I got to tell you, man, things can change, but the Dallas Cowboys look awfully good to me, man. Now, this league's about attrition. You just saw it with the Eagles and Avonte Maddox. They could lose Micah Parsons. That would drastically affect their team. Tony Pollard would drastically affect their team. A lot of things can happen, but when that team is up at full strength as they are now, that's a pretty good stinking football team, Jeff Kerr.
And they weren't even at full strength yesterday. They didn't have Brandon Cooks in that game, and they still were able to put up 30. I'll say this with the Cowboys. Not that I wasn't impressed. I expected them to win that game yesterday, and I expect them to win big. I was actually shocked their defense gave up a long touchdown to Zach Wilson. I know it was a blown coverage and a missed tackle, but I'm actually kind of shocked. I thought they were going to shut out the Jets yesterday just because the matchup in the trenches totally favored their defensive line against the Jets' offensive line. But Cowboys are good. They're a very good football team, but they're usually very good in September. And there's an interesting stat I found with the Cowboys. So 11 teams have outscored their opponents by 6 points out of the first 2 weeks. None of them made the Super Bowl. So maybe they can break that streak.
Yeah, I got to eat some crow here this morning because I kept telling Cowboy fans I'm not sure that they're that much better. They did go out and get an upgrade at wide receiver and a cornerback, but I thought they took a step backwards at tight end, at play caller, and at kicker. Well, both of their tight ends caught touchdown passes yesterday. The Cowboys have scored 70 points in the first 2 weeks, so I'm having a tough time putting McCarthy on blast. And the kid, Aubrey, whatever the hell his last name is, kicked 5 field goals yesterday, one of which I think was 55. So the 3 areas where I thought they might have gone backwards, they did just fine the first 2 weeks out. So that's why, yes, the Cowboys have
I might call the Defensive Player of the Year voting after yesterday. He's got to stay healthy, but boy, Mike is just woof.
The key stat for Dallas through 2 games is, and I tweeted this yesterday, 7 takeaways, no giveaways. You're 2-0.
Yeah.
No, that'll do it. And they kept they haven't thrown the ball much down, and maybe with Cooks out of line, that's part of it. But it's nobody right now. Nobody looks like they can cover CeeDee Lamb. He just gets open on almost every single play, and even if it's an 8-yard pass, you let him run for 5 more. First down, move the chains, and the Cowboys are back knocking on the door for a touchdown. You mentioned you thought that the Jets were going to get shut out. What are the Jets going to do? Because they can't in good conscience. I like Robert Saleh. I know you're a Hard Knocks guy too, and I thought he was very good on it. But different coaches have different styles, and I understand different players need to be handled differently. Can they go kicking the pants to Zach Wilson at some point? Oh, he's growing. He's hardworking. He's got a great attitude. He works at it. He learned from Aaron Rodgers. He stinks. How about we say he stinks, and how about you tell him he can't stink, and how about a little tough love instead of another pat on the back after a 3-interception game? What the hell are the Jets going to do with Zach Wilson?
They shouldn't play him. If you want my us big and Judy, he was the worst quarterback in football the last 2 years for a reason, and he looked every bit of that in the second half yesterday once that team got down. And they got to do something. What does it say about Carson Wentz that he can't even get a phone call? As far as we know, he can't get a phone call. Like, he can't be worse.
Yeah, nobody even talks about Carson.
Anytime you see anything about Carson, you know it's a plan from his agent. Oh, veteran teams waiting for it. No, nobody's reaching out to Carson Wentz.
No,
I think you got to trade for somebody. I mean, someone's got to be available. Jameis Winston, maybe. You can't go with Zach Wilson the whole year.
Yeah. Every once in a while, I'm going to play devil's advocate, but every once in a while. But by the way, I don't think people know how much the Philadelphia Eagles loved Zach Wilson coming out of college. They loved him
they did.
coming out of college. I mean, loved him. They thought he was going to be a star quarterback. He threw that one pass to, I think it was Lazard on the sideline. Looked like a catch. He didn't get the second foot in. Ultimately, and I think there was a penalty anyway. So either way, but just the throw, it was like, wow. There's not a lot of guys that can make that throw.
Stop with the arm talent.
Well,
arm talent's nice. You got to be an NFL quarterback.
What I'm trying to say is, and I know it's Jets, I know it's close to you. What I'm trying to say is Justin Fields as well. Young quarterbacks got to be in the right situation. I wonder what he would have been with Andy Reid. I always wonder that. I wonder what Justin Fields would be with Andy Reid. Even here with Nick Sirianni, and they had Shane, they had Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo, all these offense. But boy, situation matters so much for young quarterbacks. And I think people go, Zach Wilson stinks. He does stink. Objectively, he stinks. On the field, Justin Fields, he stinks. But I really think those organizations did a disservice to those young quarterbacks. Am I wildly off base?
No, I would have liked to see a guy like Zach Wilson, Justin Fields with Shane Steichen as well. My issue is, too, Nathaniel Hackett. I know that's Aaron
He
Rodgers' guy.
stinks. He stinks.
Yeah, he should not be a coach in this league. I'm sorry. He was terrible in Jacksonville. He was terrible in Denver. Russell Wilson is amazingly better all of a sudden at playing football, even though the Broncos are 0-2. He's still amazingly better. And Nathaniel Hackett, that play calling yesterday was atrocious. That was just as bad as Zach Wilson's quarterback play. But I would like to see these guys in a different situation, but we all know that's not how it works.
You got to be able to perform. How'd Trey Lance work out with an offensive genius out there in San Francisco?
I don't think Trey Lance is good.
Well, there you go. So maybe it's the player. Maybe it's not the system. Maybe it's not the offensive coordinator. I'm guaranteeing you that the Jets offensive coordinator did not call for a pass directly to a Dallas defensive back yesterday. Zach Wilson threw it directly to a Dallas defensive back.
No, I mean, there's levels.
Player,
like there's levels, but
whether they're offenses or defensive, you got to be able to throw it to your teammates, not to the other team.
There's levels. Obviously, Andy couldn't turn Kevin Cobb into Patrick Mahomes. Right. There's obviously levels, but what I'm saying is, Kevin Cobb had that 300 and all of a sudden the concussions, he was going in a positive direction. They're going to be a little bit better if they're in good situations. Now, maybe ultimately they fail. In the case of Trey Lance, I mean, the guy never played. I think that was more of an evaluation aspect. He never played, and they just fell in love with his traits. So I think I look at more evaluation. It's always an individual situation, and he probably would have failed here. But I just bring it up because the Eagles loved him, and the Eagles are a good organization. So it's not like he doesn't have talent. That's all I'm trying to say.
This is my issue with that game yesterday, and Jody will probably agree with me 110% on this. Breece Hall gets 5 touches. Dalvin Cook gets 5 touches. Breece Hall gets 4. Do you know who your quarterback is? Run the ball.
Well, you got some Dalvin Cook experience. Great player for you, but he's going to fumble in big spots. It wasn't even a big spot, but, the game was over by that point. But that's frustrating. When you're getting the ball, that's a veteran player getting the ball. And granted, it's Micah Parsons, but getting it ripped out like that, that's not acceptable. And that's been going on for years. Breece Hall, yeah, you get behind and that's, but he should get the ball more. No question about that.
Well, I think Micah Parsons was on Breece Hall a little bit yesterday, too. That wasn't by accident.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, Cowboys were in heavy boxes all day long. They dared the Jets to throw the football. If you don't believe,
you should. As well, you should.
If you don't believe the guy throw the football, you put 9 in the box and go, yeah, go ahead, run. And that's what and they realized, we can't run the football. I guess we're gonna have to let.
By the way,
that's what he did. He threw it to the other team like he always does.
If Gardner gets that pick 6, the Jets lead the game, right? What that would have been amazing if he pulled that in, because that was an easy pick.
Did you see what happened with Gardner yesterday? He kind of shut down social media. They were getting on him. A bunch of Cowboys fan accounts were saying CeeDee Lamb owned him. And I actually looked up the stats. When Gardner was the primary defender, he only allowed 19 yards. It was 5-6, but it was only 19 yards. And Lamb only had 1 catch off him. So those stats are.
Yeah, fans are often wrong, Jeff. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? Cowboys fans are really often wrong because I tried to argue with them. This is why I gave up talking to fans, by the way. It has nothing to do with Eagles fans, Giants fans, Commanders fans. It's their fans because they think I make up air yard stats. I said, and I even showed them the picture. It's right there. Oh, I don't believe it. You're making that up. You're putting it in. Fine. You know what? Make up what you want. I don't care.
Mute.
Oh, there were a lot of muted. And you know what? It's funny. I was actually defending Gardner and Prescott at the same time, and they still thought I was going after Prescott.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is. I mean, fans are going to get it. They like their teams, and they want to hear positive things about their teams.
Well, then they can listen to Dave Spadaro if they want to.
Yeah, exactly.
If they need to hear Eagle positivity. I get you. All right. Not only did the Cowboys look good in their first 2 wins, The Commanders also 2-0.
We got to get Kratz on to talk about
on?
Sam Howell, baby.
Oh,
Ground floor.
Ed Kratz was in his element in that second half yesterday.
Yeah.
I got to give Sam Howell credit because he did play yesterday. They rallied from down 18 points. Giants rallied from down 21 points. The Commanders actually look at, and I wasn't watching the game. I was watching the red zone, so they're jumping in and out of it. But they were passing the ball effectively. All think McLaurin is one of the most underrated wide receivers in the National Football League. Once again, the NFC East, and they have to have had a loss because the Cowboys and the Giants played each other 7-1 out of the gate for the 4 NFC East team. Is it the best division in football again, Jeff Kerr? Last year was the only division that had 3 teams that won a playoff game. Remember, the Giants won a playoff game. The Cowboys won a playoff game, and the Eagles, of course, won 2 to get to the Super Bowl. Eagles still in the best division in the National Football League?
Yep. So my overreactions reality checks piece that comes out every Sunday night right after the 425 games. I write them really quick because it's whatever thought comes in my head. I said, you know what? The NFC East is the best division in football. Again, it's reality. Like you said, they only have 1 loss because 2 teams played each other. I know it was a 40-0 game, but
well, I'm gonna pump the brakes. Now, I think the NFC East is one of the best, and it might end up being the best. But I mean, you look at Washington now. They barely beat Arizona, and they barely beat Denver, 2, of the bottom beaters of this league, at least on paper. So I'm not going to say that's a great football team. They just happen to have an easy schedule. They've taken advantage of it early in the season. I'm very impressed with Sam Howell. I'm more impressed that Chase Young's finally back and looked like Chase Young. Now, if that happens and you have Young and Sweat and Allen and Payne, they might be better than people expect.
Montez Sweat had 14 pressures yesterday. That's more than the entire Jets team has through 2 games.
I was watching the end of that game, so I didn't see the whole game. Sweat and Young were basically meeting at the quarterback every single snap.
That was the whole game, John. That was the whole game, John. The whole game. And I'll tell you what, I love Bieniemy's offense. Bieniemy can call some plays. I mean, it was, okay, the run's not working. We're going to test it, this secondary, especially after Kareem Jackson decided to basically knock out Logan Thomas. It's like, okay, we're going to throw the ball and we're going to test these guys. And
I think Washington is better than we all expected, but I can't say they're a great team right now, beating Arizona.
I have Washington as a playoff team going into the season. I think Washington's going to win 9-10 games. I really do. I
had Green Bay as a playoff team. Now they lost in Atlanta, who's another 2-0 team.
They blew it though.
These young quarterbacks, I'm most impressed with Jordan Love. I am. I think he can play.
Jordan Love is good. I'm going to say that right now. I don't know what happened in that 4th quarter, but for some reason, Green Bay and Mike LaFleur just decided to, Matt LaFleur, sorry, wrong LaFleur. But they just decided to be as conservative as they could and said, there's no way Desmond Ridder is going to beat us. Well, he did beat you because he could beat you with his legs. And I love what Arthur Smith did yesterday. We're going to go for it on 4th down because I got Bijan Robinson and you don't, and you're going to have to stop him behind Jake Matthews and Chris Lindstrom and my offensive line, and it worked every single time. I loved aggressive Arthur Smith yesterday.
Yeah, Jeff Kerr, despite DeAndre Swift going for 170 plus the other night, looked damn good. Should have been the number 1 back week number 1, but we could argue that another day. We will argue it if Kenny Gainwell somehow gets more carries than him in week number 3. But we'll give the coaching staff the rest of the week to figure that one out. How big is the percentage of Eagle fans who are going this week? Told you should have taken Bijan Robinson, even though they got the bet. Well, John McMullen, did you not say on this show Bijan 365?
Yes.
Did we not talk about Bijan to death? Did you
all
not
the
call the Eagle fans on the carpet for talking Bijan?
All
Are
the
you
time.
telling
Every
me
day.
They all disappeared?
Every day.
And they all went away and moved to the West Coast?
I
Do
hope.
you think there's still some of them here in town?
Well, maybe
got Jalen Carter out of this.
Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but now that they've seen Jalen Carter, I think they realize the error of their ways. Now, maybe I'm being maybe I'm giving people too much credit, because you're right. People generally like skill position players. They like the sexy players. To me, the other back they have, Algier, is the guy that pushes the pile. He doesn't have the wiggle. Yeah, I mean, if Eagles fans still want Bijan Robinson over Jalen Carter, they should be ashamed of themselves.
I tell
They don't
you
know
what,
what's going on.
Just saying, there are some of them out there, and they're still.
Well, you're
hunting
probably
that
right. You're probably right, but those people should be ashamed of themselves.
the Falcons did an excellent job drafting Bijan. I know everybody goes, you can't draft the running back in the top 10. I get it, but man, does that work for them, because of that offensive line and that run block, and that is going to be hard to stop all year. And now you got Bijan Robinson making Darnell Savage, of all people, missing him, and a 4th and 1. He just takes a toss and goes 13 yards. I even said yesterday, man, he would look good behind the Eagles' offensive line. But I'll take Jalen Carter any day.
Well, here's why the Eagles don't need Bijan. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if Bijan Robinson walked into the NovaCare complex, he's obviously the best running back. All due respect to DeAndre Swift. Could you imagine Bijan Robinson getting 133 yards before contact? What would the final number be?
Oh, God.
He might be pushing Peterson at whatever it was, 290. What was
296 was 296. That was the Chargers game, right? Was that the game?
The Chargers game, yeah, 296. Yeah, could you imagine him with 133 yards before contact, before getting touched? Boy, that would be scary.
I'll tell you what, Bijan is already a top 5 running back in the NFL, John. He is, and
I've never doubted the kid's talent. I
Never
said
did I.
it's not value, and from the Eagles' perspective, I cover the Eagles. I know how the Eagles think. They're not taking a damn running back at 8 overall, 9. For them, it would have been 10. And luckily for these fans, the Bijan truthers, they never got the opportunity. If you think they were taking Bijan Robinson over Jalen Carter, you don't know a thing about this organization.
And they just traded, they just traded a 4th round pick for DeAndre Swift, who balled out last week.
Yeah.
Quick question, John. Did the Eagles get every decision they make right?
No.
Okay.
But they believe it's about what they believe.
I understand, but my point is, Howie Roseman, you're telling me, would not have picked Bijan Robinson at number 9.
He would not have picked him.
Does that mean that Bijan Robinson doesn't deserve to go at number 9, or just the Eagles believe he doesn't go?
The Eagles don't believe he deserves to go at number 9.
The Eagles can be wrong. They're not often wrong. They hit at a higher percentage
wrong,
than a whole bunch of organizations.
They're wrong a bunch of times.
But they do not bat 100%.
I got to cover Adrian Peterson. It's very hard for me to project Bijan Robinson as a better runner than Adrian Peterson.
All around,
because I've never, all around, maybe better runner. I've never seen a better runner than Adrian Peterson. I think you got to go back to Jim Brown.
That's pretty good when you're a rookie, when you're comping a guy to an undoubted Hall of Famer, first round ballot. That's pretty good to be able to jump into the
Adrian Peterson
league.
led the league in rushing his rookie year, didn't he?
Yeah. I love you, Jody, but you're not letting me finish my point. My point is, yes, I'm in hindsight. I saw Adrian Peterson at his level, and it didn't freaking matter. It didn't freaking matter. You can't, and that was even, it was more geared toward, he wasn't the MVP as a running back. It was still more geared towards more teams felt the running game was important. Now it's shifted even further. If you're building a team around a running back, you're doing it wrong. Now, could the Eagles, by the way, forget about Jalen Carter. Who was the defensive tackle picked after Jalen Carter? They might have taken Nolan Smith at 13 overall, where they started. They didn't start at 13. Where'd they start this year? 10.
After Carter, it was what? Wright, then Pierce Skoronsky, then
they might have went offensive line. They might have made a mistake. I'm not saying they wouldn't have made a mistake by taking a different player than Carter. And luckily, the rest of the league allowed Carter to get to the Eagles. and they might have taken a lesser player. They weren't taking a running back, period. End of sentence. That's not what they believe in. And that part, I believe they're right. I believe they're right, especially now with their offensive line. Again, you just saw DeAndre Swift get 133 yards before contact. And that quarterback and the manipulation of spacing and defenders. I said it all spring on Bijan 365. This team doesn't need Bijan Robinson. Other teams probably do need him.
The Falcons needed them, and they had Tyler Algier, and they still needed them.
But, they're not going to win anything with building a team around a running back.
Desmond Ridder was awful yesterday, by the way. I mean, he showed up in the fourth.
He's not great. He's not great.
No, Jed threw 4 picks yesterday.
Yeah.
All right. The only point I was trying to make was if the Eagles decided that Bijan Robinson wasn't worth the pick that high, and man, they take Jalen Carter, you can't argue with the results of the pick the Eagles made, but it doesn't mean that Bijan Robinson wasn't worthy of a pick that high. The Eagles might not have Eagles. The Eagles may evaluate running backs that way. It doesn't mean that other teams in the league can't say, yeah, we'll take him here and then have it prove to be a good pick. I think the kid is that talented.
The Lions took a running back at 12. I mean, there's a lot of teams that don't think the way the Eagles think. I mean, there's a lot of teams. Now, the problem is if say the Bears came to their senses and took Jalen Carter, and the Eagles were left to make that decision, which they, weren't because Atlanta took him. But then you start talking, would they have taken Bijan Robinson, or would they have taken Peter Skoronski or Lucas Van Ness, or insert name? It could be Darnell Wright. It could be Broderick Jones at positions they value. Could have been Gonzalez. Then you would have had a controversy because they would have taken one of those other players. Might have even been Nolan Smith. They love Nolan Smith.
Christian Gonzalez is going to be.
Except they won't put him on the field for the first 2 games. They may love him long term.
Yeah, but it's about more than it's about more than 1 year for them. But my whole point is they probably would have gone. Not probably. They definitely would have gone in a different direction. And then there'd be a huge controversy because they'd be getting a player who wasn't Jalen Carter, and then Bijan would be Bijan, and then it would have been a huge controversy. But I think most Eagles fans are savvy enough to know they made the right decision.
And they never had a chance to get Bijan anyway, so the whole point was moved.
Yeah.
All right. Bijan came off the board before they ever selected, but I'm with John that they wouldn't have taken him, but that's the Eagles. And it annoys me to people that you can't take a running back that high. I think a year from now, I think 2 years from now, I think 5 years from now, we're going to look back and go, yeah, it was a nice pick of Bijan Robinson at number. What did he go? 9? 8. Right. And Eagles went 9. Yeah, I think he's going to merit being the 8th pick in the draft. Eagles might not have taken him, but it doesn't mean the National Football League can't say that he was meritorious of that pick. Now, Gibbs at number 12, that's something we can keep our eye on going forward. I think he's kind of a swing back guy, and you don't take a swing back at number 12. All right, Jeff Carr, one other team I did want to get your thoughts on was San Francisco 49ers, also 2-0. Easy win against Pittsburgh yesterday. The Rams hung in there. We give the Eagle fans credit all the time because they take it on the road and they take ownership of stadiums. Well, that was San Francisco's house yesterday in L.A.
It always is when they go there.
You know who I got to give an attaboy to? Roger Goodell. He gave special dispensation for both teams to wear their home uniforms. They allowed the 49ers to wear red and the Rams to wear blue because it was a quasi-home game for both teams, and the 49ers go ahead and win and get out to a 2-0 start. So for those who said Eagles, Niners, Cowboys drop off, yeah, I said Eagles, Niners, and then the Cowboys weren't that close. Yeah, maybe they are. Maybe I got to give them their credit. These 3 teams are the best teams in the NFC by far, are they not?
Oh, yeah, they clearly are. Now, I do worry about the 49ers with this. They're really burning Christian McCaffrey up early. I know you want to win football games, and when Christian McCaffrey's on the field, you got to give him the ball. But you also have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle. you don't need to be running Christian McCaffrey this much early in the season to beat the Los Angeles Rams. But I think the Rams might end up being a little better than maybe I thought they were going to be. I thought they were going to be like
they're already better than I thought they were going to be. How about this kid Nakua?
Nakua. I drafted him in every league, every fantasy league this year, John. And I got 10 dynasty leagues. I'm cashing in on him, baby.
Very nice.
I had to start on week 1 because I had a bunch of injuries, and he ain't coming out of the lineup.
No, they might have something when Cup comes back and they have both of them. All of a sudden, I got to give Sean McVay a little bit credit for scheming that up. And Matthew Stafford looks healthy; he can still play. So that's a game that you thought, oh, the Eagles will kill the Rams.
All right,
but did you see they bench Cam Akers like he was in the game plan all week? It's like you're not playing.
Yeah, something's going on there, but they'll probably trade him to Kevin O'Connell and
Minnesota. By the way, poor Alexander Madison. That's disgraceful.
People are disgusting. It's a football game. I mean, he played poorly. You could say he played poorly. That's fine.
The offensive line.
Yeah, exactly. But that's disgusting.
And by the way, on Sean McVay, who the Eagles have coming up in just a couple of weeks. Eagles play the Rams.
It's a little bit tougher than people expected.
Might be tougher, but let me ask you a question about yesterday's game. 4 seconds to go, down 10 points. The Rams line up for a field goal. And the spread on the game was either 7 or 7.5. Luckily, I had it at 7. But I was ready to cash that ticket, and he's kicking a field goal to cut the deficit to 7. Hello, you lost, Sean McVay. What the hell are you thinking?
Who in that organization or what prominent member bet on that game that Sean McVay had to cover for him?
Yeah. Who knows? You might be right. Maybe you got a call from a burner phone. Oh, that's not Arizona, but who knows? Maybe the GM got word.
Hey, can I mention something? How about Jonathan Gannon and his halftime speeches? That fire in the gut must not be working because they
fire in the gut. I didn't see the halftime.
Oh man! Oh yeah, they had like a Cardinals All Access thing, and I was on the All City version for Phoenix. It's just been established for a couple of years, and we were kind of making fun of the whole fire in the gut thing.
I did that. They should probably stop doing those things.
Especially with him, it's his face is priceless. With Daniel Jones is just kind of torturing. I'm like, dude, you were torturing Daniel Jones the whole first half, and now you're letting him just do what he wants. You're just letting him go deep to Jalen Hyatt. Like, what do you tell this team at halftime? The Giants were outscored 60-0 through 6 quarters, and you let them win.
Yeah, I look. People are going to get on me. I'm not. The Cardinals are terrible. Let's make no mistake about it.
Terrible.
They have the worst roster in the NFL. I mean, what are we talking about with coaches allowing them? They don't have any players. It's astonishing they were up 28-7. I look at the other way. What are the Giants doing to get down 28-7 before they wake up and you start to think, how bad are the New York Giants? And luckily they came back to win the game. I mean, this league is about players. Now, coaching is more important than any other professional sport, but this assumption that so-and-so coach lost the game or this coach won the game, you got to have players, man. You got to have players in this league.
Players should still be able to hold the 28-7.
Does the Cardinal offense have no shot because Jonathan Gannon is their coach?
No shot.
They have no shot because they have hired an offensive.
They have nobody
as their head coach because the defensive coaching hiring seems to be a massive mistake in the National Football League.
Yeah, and I believe that. I would never hire a defensive coach,
including Gannon. Your boy Gannon should not have gotten a head coaching job.
I say all the time, I would never hire in this era,
look at
I
Chicago.
would never hire.
Right, you just finished saying the Cardinals lost because they got lousy players. Well, which is it? Does the coaching win games or do the players win games?
The players win and lose games.
Do you think the Bears have lousy players? Because they have a defensive coach.
In other words, Zach Wilson sucks. We can all agree on that.
That we can all agree Zach Wilson sucks, but again, it's not when I say players win games, it's not that coaches can't help players. Good coaches make players go a little bit farther than where they would have went themselves. Bad coaches, on the other hand, turn them in a negative direction. I'm not saying there can't be a bad coach. There's very good coaches. We know who they are. And they, as I said, the problem is, like people say, Bill Belichick stinks because he can't win without Brady. Well, Bill Belichick, the GM, might stink and make some bad decisions. They probably should give that part of it up, to be honest. But Bill Belichick, the coach, is going to get more out of his group than you are. That's how I feel about good coaches.
The Patriots defense, by the way, is really good.
If he's in Arizona, he's going to get more out of that shitty group than Jonathan Gannon is, but he's not going to win a lot of games. That's what I believe with coaching. You need, Nick Sirianni says it all the time, bless his heart. Show me a good coach, I'll show you a bunch of good players, because you cannot win without good players, no matter how good a coach you are. That's my belief on coaching.
I agree across the board on that one. The coaching is important. It trails way back in second place over the talent that you're trying to coach on a week in, week out basis. All right, Jeff Carr, what do you got for this week? What are you doing next weekend? You doing Eagles, or you got a game to go to next Sunday?
So I don't think I'll be going to a game Sunday. I don't think I'm going to Tampa Monday either, just because of the quick turnaround. Monday night games are kind of tough. So I'm pretty much going to have another NFL Sunday, live blogging for CBS, writing all the national stuff, and I'll be back when they play, Washington week 4, John?
Yeah, I haven't looked ahead. I listen to Nick Sirianni. I don't look ahead. I got to look at the schedule, man. I'm all about Tampa.
You got to keep the main thing the main thing.
Got to keep the main thing.
Commanders. That's right. All of a sudden, the
that's
Commanders
a tougher game than that's a tougher game than that, and the Rams, by the way, a little bit tougher than expected.
It's funny how.
And by the way, Tampa Bay is as well. Everybody's like, that'll be easy.
Remember, guys, Eagles don't play anybody. That's what they'll tell you. They don't play anybody.
But when I looked at the Eagles' schedule, I thought their first game where they truly be challenged was the Jet game. Not if Zach Wilson's the quarterback.
Yeah.
Won't be much of a challenge at the Meadowlands. I've already gotten a day off to go watch that game.
They got a nice bye week before they play Dallas.
There you go. All right. He's Jeff Kerr. Thank you very much for hopping in with us. We will talk to you again next Monday.
Thanks, Jeff.
See you guys.
Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports.
Disrespecting your Jets, Jody.
Oh, I'm disrespecting my Jets. What do you mean him? Who cares what he says? I'm disrespecting. Zach Wilson stinks.
Well, he does.
Traits and arm talent is something I don't want to hear about Zach Wilson. I don't care what your pre-evaluation was. I don't care if the Eagles liked Zach Wilson a ton. Guess what? The Eagles would have been wrong. Would Zach Wilson have been better with the Eagles, with better coaching, with better offense? Yes,
that's my belief.
Guess what? Not good enough. Do you think Zach Wilson, in the same situation, could ever have the kind of year that Jalen Hurts had last year?
No.
Jalen Hurts was the second-round pick. Zach Wilson was the second pick in the draft. I'm sorry. The guy can't play.
And the better comparison to me would be Justin Fields, because I think Justin Fields could be a good quarterback in the right situation. I don't necessarily think that about Zach Wilson, but I do think there are a lot of situations he'd be a lot better. And, maybe competence is such a big thing in this league. Maybe a Baker Mayfield type starter, but I never think he'd be good. Justin Fields, boy, somebody could have got him up to speed processing and saying, look, you got to work on this. You got to work on that. You got to speed everything up from day one consistently. I think he could have been something. Now I don't. I think the die is cast on him as well. He's going to make plays because of his athleticism, but I think they've ruined him. And I think organizations ruined.
Who was his coach first year?
They had.
I'll tell you, it was Matt Nagy, who Andy Reid has given the blessing to by bringing him back as his offensive coordinator. They had Matt Nagy; he stunk too, and they moved on from him. They
shouldn't have moved
a defensive guy.
Matt Nagy. I'd have to look it up, but I think he won, 12, 13 games with that team early in his tenure. And, things went
one season.
Well, things went a little bit south, and they, coaches have to learn just like everything else. So Matt was, he started 12-4, lost to the Eagles. That was the double doink year. And then he was 500. It's a hell of a lot better than they are now. I'm not saying he was great, but he's a hell of a lot better than I have since he left. I think people are too quick to pull the plug. People want to forget about it. But Jody, people wanted to pull the plug on Nick at 2-5 because he had a bad first press conference, and
stupid.
And he said flowers, we're going to bloom, and people are throwing jerseys at him in Las Vegas, and Dom's got to, protect him. People want to forget about that and act like it didn't happen. You got to let these guys grow. I always bring up startup costs. That there's startup costs with freaking coaches and GMs as well. And I talk it all the time with these young GMs in that division specifically, because there's two of them. Ryan Poles, there's really three of them. Ryan Poles has stunk out the joint. Kwesi has stunk out the joint, and Brad Holmes has been pretty good. But even he's made some questionable decisions. Does that mean they're going to be bad forever? No, they're probably going to learn from their mistakes and get better if they get the opportunity. Right. And they probably won't. In the case of Ryan Poles, probably won't.
From the day you were hired, the clock starts to tick. You can build in some time. It's going to take not a ton of it, because you're on the clock. Day number one, you're expected to get trending in the right direction. Some organizations will give you more time than others, but you got to start to deliver right away when you're in that position as a general manager of a team. I'm John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Keep it right here on Birds 365.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365 after a football Sunday in which Eagles didn't play because they got their game in on Thursday night against the Vikings, a W at that. So they start the year 2-0. There are already only a handful of teams that are 2-0. That's the way the schedule works. A bunch of 1-1s, a couple bad teams. A couple of teams do come out 2-0. We touched on them briefly with Jeff Kerr, and yeah, when Ed Kratz comes out, I'm going to have to do a mea culpa for him because Sam Howell
It's still early though, Jody. But with Washington, I'm sure you're going to have some. You might want to wait on that mea culpa.
No, I don't do it. If a guy plays well, I give him credit. Now, am I putting Sam Howell in Canton because of 2 weeks? No, I'm not an idiot, but I will give him props for the 2 weeks that he's had.
Oh yeah, he's played. I'll tell you what, Taylor Heineke couldn't put up that. They're far more explosive. And but with Washington, Chase Young is what concerns me because if he can play, because Montez Sweat can play and Jonathan Allen can play and Deron Payne can play. That is a hell of a front, and that's what everyone projected when he came out of Ohio State. He's been a disappointment, but he looked great yesterday. And the S'mores, I only saw the end of the game, and he looked tremendous. That scares me a little bit.
Yeah, and Brian Robinson played pretty well on my CBS show that I do on Sunday nights. I jump on with Zach Gelb for the last 2 hours of his 8-hour marathon show, and we give out game balls at the end of his show. And we both gave a game ball to a running back, B. Robinson. He was going to go Bijan, and I was going to go Brian. He went Brian. I went Bijan. Both Robinsons played really well. Commanders had 2 nice wins. You're right. They haven't beat a world beater yet, but win is a win is a win. And they've gotten 2 good wins so far. So I will give props. I do this all the time. I don't care. I'll not try and make excuses or explanations. I give you props. I'm not going to go down the road with you. I'm still not sure that Sam Howell is going to be a multiple year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year starting quarterback in this league, but to start the season the way he has, you got to give him at least that much credit. And the Commanders did look okay yesterday, but part of that was, well, here's a shot. I was always a Sean Payton fan. I thought he's one of the best coaches in the National Football League. I've had him on my show a couple of times, and I think he's a smart dude. Did he tempt the football gods by just taking a shot at the former coaching staff there, going the worst coaching job in the history? Hello, coach. You're 0-2 now, and your team blew a big lead yesterday. Did he put the football gods on notice?
I think he was telling the truth. I think it's ironic with coaches, who do tell the truth occasionally. Very fewer and fewer do, which I think is a bad thing. But then when they do tell the truth, they get crap for telling the truth, and then they clam up and they become, the we got to do a better job type phraseology. So it's kind of a catch-22 for those guys. But it's what I was talking about with coaches. Yeah, they still stink because they don't have a very good team, but they look a heck of a lot better than they did last year. Russell looks better. And again, you can only elevate them. So my point is, I think he's still a good coach.
Does the defense look better with Sam Howell dissecting them apart?
Well, defense in this league is tough. You know,
John, last time I checked, defense is still 50%. That of all the changes the game has gone through, and it changes almost on a week-to-week basis, certainly a year-to-year basis. It's still offense against defense. That hasn't changed. And
no, what I'm saying is I'm not saying defense doesn't matter. I'm saying defense is tough. It used to be back in the day. I say it all the time. Good defense would beat good offense. Now good offense beats good defense. And I think people don't realize that. And they say, like Dallas. Dallas looks like world beaters right now on the defensive side of the football. I guarantee, I don't know who, but I guarantee at some point they're going to get a 30 spot put on them and maybe even a 40 spot. And it's not because they're not good compared to everybody else. They're good. But good offense beats good defense. That's what I'm trying to say. Same thing with you've got a whole basically platoon of Eagles fans who think their defense stunk last year. And they were number 2 in the NFL. And you can't convince these people. Believe me, I've tried. You can't. They stunk, Jody. They stunk. They're not watching the rest of the league, because, the numbers bear that out. But you are going to get gouged in this league. I don't know when it's coming, but every single defense in this league will get gouged in this era.
Right, because there's a percentage of Eagle fans that want to compare this year's defense to Buddy Ryan's defense, which had Reggie White and Seth Joyner and Clyde Simmons and Eric Allen and Byron Evans. Yeah. You need to compare this year's Eagles defense to the other 31 teams that are in the National Football League right now, not the Eagles defense from 30 years ago. That's pretty much irrelevant, as a matter of fact. But let me repeat this because I saw it again yesterday, Johnny Mac. In the National Football League, it seemed like every year for the last couple of years, and it didn't happen this year, they give you the point of emphasis. Something they're going to be looking to call ahead of time. And you have the calls in the preseason and they just stand out to you because you go like, well, they didn't call that before. Really? They're going to call that now? And they do it and they call it and people get up in arms about it. And then over the course of time, they kind of back off it. And they still call it more than they used to, but not as fervently as they do during the preseason. And it's quote unquote points of emphasis, because they want to see the game change a little bit through the referees. We didn't get that speech this year. There was no real factor that they wanted to have calls made in preseason to let the teams know this is the way we'd prefer to see the game played. Kind of like this year in baseball, it never came out, and no one was ever able to find the memo, the email from the commissioner that said any hit that you can possibly call a hit and bypass an error, even if it looks like a blatant error, just go ahead and call it a hit so we can pump up our offensive numbers and say our game is improving on the offensive end. No one will go on record and say that they got that memo, but I know that memo exists. And I can just with my own 2 eyes judge and go, how the hell is that not an error that they keep giving guys hits? Well, here's what we've got in the National Football League this year. Certainly on the Eagles game on Thursday night, and at least 5 times yesterday, I saw a play that would have blatantly been called a pass interference in previous years. And they're just letting them play. They're giving D-backs a chance.
I'm 100% on that. Let them play.
I'm perfectly fine with it if that's what they're going to do, because you were just making a point about offense dominates defense because that's the way the league has changed. And I agree with you. I think you're 100% right. Maybe the pendulum is just swinging back a little bit, because even the 2-point conversion after Denver.
That was a penalty.
It was a blatant penalty. Guess what? No penalty. Game's over. It was a pass interference.
I don't think it's a point of emphasis. I think it's guys blowing calls. I think it's
you do. You just think the referees stink.
Yeah. I just think they're blowing calls. Look, one of the things I can't stand about football Sundays is going on social media and seeing all the complaints about officiating. I don't care. I don't care. They're going to blow calls. I don't give a shit. I don't. Now, maybe it's because I've been covering this league for 25 years and I heard every single coach along the way say, control what you can control. And it's seeped into my brain. They're going to blow calls. They're going to blow calls. Now, I talk about all the time. I think I was one of the first ones saying, why doesn't this league have full-time officials? I think that's absurd. They can improve things. And I'll talk about stuff like that. But for people that get upset, and I get it, you got a chance to tie the game. And if you're Denver and it's a blatant missed call and it's a blatant PI, I get why that's upsetting to fans. But, don't put yourself in that position to let those guys blow calls, because guess what, Jody? They're going to blow calls. And sometimes it works in your favor. Sometimes it doesn't work in your favor. But again, every single coach in the history of mankind has said, control what you can control. I can't control a crappy call from an official, so I can't worry about it. I can't worry about it.
Be it social media or be it my phone lines, either locally or nationally, what bothers me more about guys complaining about refereeing is when they complain about refereing, but it's only in one direction. Prime example, Thursday night, Eagles versus Vikings. The A.J. Brown D-back held his arm down, didn't let him catch the football. Was it pass interference? Oh, you bet it was. But then later in the game, Evans coming over the Miami guy, the Minnesota guy's back. First of all, he hit him 2 seconds before the ball got there.
Yeah.
Then he moved him, physically moved him out of his path with his hitting him. And then he came down and hit his arm afterwards. I thought he fouled him 3 times on one play. And there was no flag whatsoever. Oh, all the calls. How did they not call that penalty against A.J. Brown? Well, you're right. They could have called a penalty. How about the penalty against Evans? Oh, good defensive play. That's where it gets ridiculous. If you're going to observe the game, observe it with both sides with the same colored glasses. Don't just have one side. You note all the mistakes that the referee makes against your team, but the mistakes that he makes for your team, oh, that's just a good call. That's
that's just the way it is. I mean, fans are only going to complain about the calls that affect their team. That's kind of baked into it. We understand that. I mean, I love it. Like Slay last year. Take a look at last year's Minnesota game when he had the great game against Jefferson. I mean, he flat out admitted to, they were letting me play. He could have had 4 interceptions. He could have had 4 PI calls if it were a different crew on a different night. And that's my concern moving forward, because you mentioned that point of emphasis. I don't think it is a point of emphasis. So you're going to see ticky-tack PI calls moving forward in certain situations, and they're going to go back to these plays and say, well, you were letting them play here. No, I just think they're blowing calls. They're human beings blowing calls, and I don't think it's more than that.
Yeah, I do. I think that the competition committee got word to the referees that you got to cut them some more slack. We're not going to go on record. And I'll give them credit because they've done it before, saying when they say they're going to make penalty calls, well, when you're doing that, when you're changing the way you've been calling games for years, you're basically admitting a mistake. And this year they chose not to admit that mistake. But behind the scenes, I think they let them know.
Well, that would I would love that, actually, but that would be the first time in years that this team has tried to limit offense. This league is trying to limit offense.
It's flying in the face of their usual behavior. I get that, John, but it's been so. And again, I watch a lot of football, certainly every snap of the Eagle game, and then into every snap yesterday from 1 o'clock straight through to the last snap of the Vikings and the Dolphins and the Patriots. Which, oh, by the way, the Patriots came up about this short on a 4th down at the end of the game.
Cole Strange. How strange is that? Cole Strange. Yeah, that was weird. I mean, I never think this league is trying to limit offense. And the minute they feel it limiting, when defenses figure something out, they try to change that immediately. Because they need scoring. They always need scoring. I'd like a good 10-7 game, but not many people do. and they're well aware of that. Well aware.
I generally agree with you, but I think this is the exception to the rule. I really do believe that they've made a conscious effort to let D-backs play a little defense this year. We'll see if it continues, but that's certainly what I've seen the first 2 weeks of the season. All right, Mac coming back. We got more Eagles to discuss. We still got a week to go before they play their next game, but they've got some decisions to make about injured players and how they're going to handle replacing them going forward. Come on back with us here on Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. Eagles won on Thursday night. They didn't play yesterday. We're breaking down the results of all the other games around the National Football League, including 2 Monday nighters tonight. I get it. This is another cash to check TV maneuver that ESPN wrote, or I should say Disney wrote a big enough check that they get 2 Monday night games for the price of one. I didn't mind it as much when they were played like back to back. One would start at 7 and the other would start at 10. Now they don't even bother with that. They're playing both games. They say games are being played all at the same time on Sundays. Why would we worry about that on Monday night? Well, because it's supposed to be special. That's what you paid that enormous amount for, because you got a special game. So you're going to compete with yourself, Disney? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. But, yeah, we'll watch both of the Monday night games tonight to wrap up week number 2. Johnny Mac, I got a question for you on the Eagles' opposition these first 2 games. Patriots and Vikings combined against the Philadelphia Eagles in the first 2 games ran 129 plays. What do you think the breakdown was run to pass on those 129 snaps versus the Eagles defense so far?
A lot of passes. I don't know. Mac was in the 50s, right? So, and Kirk was in the 30s. Well, the Vikings couldn't run the ball at all. So they got behind by 20. So, and the Patriots got behind by what, 16? So
10-0 before you could blink.
Yeah. So, it's got to be 75% passing, something in that range.
So far, out of 129 plays, 98 have been passes and only 31 have been runs.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a huge differential. And you're right. Situation does dictate. And the Patriots fell behind 10-0 quick. The Vikings chose that the running game wasn't good enough, and they were also behind, but not as badly as the Patriots were. How much is that the other team deciding our best chance to advance the football against the Philadelphia Eagles is to throw it rather than try and run it? Have the Eagles become, as the reputation become, we shouldn't try and run the ball against the Eagles? Because we wondered about that at the beginning of the season, John. Just 2 weeks ago, we were going, yeah, they're missing both of their linebackers. We don't know what the safeties are going to be. Is Reed Blankenship really going to be this good? Are teams going to be able to run the football against the Eagles? Well, the first two teams didn't even try to run the football against the Eagles.
Well, I think part of it is, and that's where you got to get down and you got to get contextual. The Patriots were missing two of their guys on the interior. They were starting two rookies on the offensive line. Minnesota was down two as well.
Right.
The offensive line.
I apologize for interrupting. When they drop back to pass, it's those same fill-in guys on offensive line that are protecting the quarterback. Do you know that the guys who were filling in were okay pass blockers, but lousy run blockers? If you got that kind of knowledge, I tip my hat to you, buddy, because I sure as hell don't.
I think they're probably lousy at both, but I think then it turns into, you can't run the ball, so you have to pass it. Like, in other words, I don't think either team came in saying, we're not going to run the ball. New England got down 16-0. And then Minnesota, every time they tried to run it, they fumbled, or they were going to try to run it, but they couldn't. Then they were down 27-7, and then it becomes, we got to try to get back in the game, and that's pass. So I think, I wouldn't get. The Eagles have done a tremendous job stopping the run early, but I wouldn't declare it over and saying, they're good against the run. It's two really struggling running teams. At some point, they're going to face a team that can run the football, and we'll get a better indication of what happens. I can't tell you when that's going to be, because upcoming, it doesn't look like great running teams either. But, for those going back to, Isaiah Pacheco gashing them in the Super Bowl or whatever, I'm not going to say they fixed that just yet. Although, if you ask me who the best defensive player on the Eagles has been thus far, I'm going to probably tell you Jalen Carter. I might tell you Josh Sweat, but number right there with them is Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis has been a monster.
Yeah. Do me a favor. You got the PFF stuff. I would actually grade out Jordan Davis above everybody else. I think he's better than
he's right there with Carter. Carter's number one, but he's like right behind him.
Carter's the number one defensive tackle, and just for the Eagles you're talking about.
Just for the Eagles. Okay. I think, he's probably, I can look. He's got to be top 2 or 3 total, but let me but yeah, those are the top 2 players. But I think Josh Sweat has been tremendous as well. And part of it, but you also have to realize, look, because a lot of people are criticizing Hassan Reddick. Like what's going on with Hassan Reddick? What's this? And part of it is probably overall, and they don't have the grades in from yesterday, so it doesn't matter yet. But coming into yesterday, Jalen was number 2 and Jordan was number 6 overall in the entire league. So, but again, when we talk about that was going to be one of the best matchups of the entire game on Thursday night was going to be Sweat against Darrisaw. For people who don't know, in Philadelphia, Darrisaw is a tremendous left tackle. Sprained his ankle, looked like he was going to play. They activated him, tweaked his ankle in pregame, couldn't play. And all of a sudden they have the backup out there and Josh just beat him like a drum. Whereas Reddick's playing against Brian O'Neill. For those who don't know, he might be the second best right tackle in football behind Lane Johnson. He's really good. So you got one guy playing against a really good player and another guy playing against a backup who's probably a bad backup. Forget about being a starter. And one guy took advantage of it, as he should, because he's a real good player. But then I think people don't realize what Reddick was against. And he still did some nice things. So all that stuff, those, you talk about the problems with PFF grades, those are the biggest problems. Like, it doesn't take into that context. Like that Josh is beating, a backup player, or Jalen Carter's beating a rookie. He's a rookie himself, so it shouldn't matter. But they just dominate because but there is a context to it where people always boil it down to the quarterbacks, right, Jody? They say Eagles can't play against good quarterbacks. Guess what? Nobody can play against good players. That's why they're good players. Micah Parsons is phenomenal.
Right.
The Eagles are the best.
Parsons? Nobody stops Micah Parsons.
The Eagles are the best at doing it. They have been since he got in the league because they have Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. They're the best, but he's gotten them as well early in his career. Nick Sirianni, when they got beat by Drum in Dallas. Nobody plays well against Micah Parsons. Nobody. So that's not baked into the grades. So, I just throw that out there as sort of an explanation.
It is, but I saw those numbers. Our buddy Ruben Frank posted those numbers about what the opposition has done against Eagles, and they are stark. That a team, as the two teams have tried to pass the ball as much as they have. I just wanted to get your take because you're a Jordan Davis guy. You've been, since the day he was drafted, this guy's not going to necessarily put up stats, but believe me when I tell you he's going to be a dominant force on the defensive line because he's going to draw to, and the average football fan has trouble comprehending that. The importance of drawing two guys to allow other players to make team. You want a stat you can sink your teeth into. How many tackles did you get? How many sacks did you get? How many pressure did you get? Jordan Davis doesn't usually accumulate those stats. Oh, he has this year. He's already getting sacked. He's already getting pressured, stuff he didn't necessarily do last year. So that's why I'd say that, yeah, he's having just as good a start as Jalen Carter, and Carter's getting a lot of credit, as he should. The Eagles, for the first couple of games, have gotten phenomenal defensive tackle play, and they're going to continue to need that. I do want to touch on a couple other games that came down yesterday. I know this will get the attention level of some Eagle fans. The mustache getting a W for Shane Steichen yesterday. How about Gardner Minshew coming off the bench?
Yeah.
Putting up good numbers, 19 of 23 for Gardner yesterday.
That's like the Jets game. He was 20. Yeah, he had a great game against the Jets. Hey, I think the Eagles downgraded at backup quarterback. I continue to say it. I think Gardner was a good backup, but and I feel bad for, Richardson was looking really good. And obviously gets a concussion on a touchdown, by the way. And I think there's another guy. I think I have a lot of respect for Shane, as you know. I think Richardson's in a good spot for a young quarterback. We'll see how it develops. But yeah, good for Shane. And I saw DeBoris Buckner. They put it up, gave him the game ball. So he's that's probably the more important part of being a head coach in this league is being the leader. And if you get your guys playing for you, and that defense is probably better than people realize. Indianapolis, the Eagles struggled against that team badly last year in Indy. If you remember, guys like Buckner and Zaire Franklin, they're good players. So
how'd the Eagles, and again, some people put more emphasis on this than others. How'd the Eagles do against their defense in the joint practice this year?
Pretty well. There was only one, and they handled them pretty soundly, except for Zaire. Zaire was giving them trouble both ways. He was a pain in the ass instigator as well. Started a bunch of fights.
Yeah.
But yeah, they handled them pretty well. The only and again, they had the 2 against Cleveland. When Miles was there, they did not handle it well. Again, good players. Another example of my good player argument. They could not do anything on day 1 against Cleveland with Myles Garrett out there destroying plays. And the next day, he tweaked something, didn't practice the next day, and all of a sudden they were fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good players are good players. Great players are great players in the case of Miles. And he's a great player. So that's how different things can be.
Yeah, I'm going to wait an extra week before I say that the Colts defense might be better. I think Colts defense is actually pretty bad, and I think it will be bad. Shoot, yesterday, Stroud threw for 300 and change. They just weren't able to finish drives and stuff like that. I think Shane's stuck with a pretty bad defense, but Gardner did the job coming off the bench, and this will annoy Eagle fans. Gardner Minshew this year is playing for $3.5 million. Marcus Mariota this year is playing for $5 million.
Yeah.
The Eagles are paying more money to Marcus Mariota than the Colts are paying to Gardner Minshew. He left just because he thought he had a chance to play more in Indianapolis, right, John?
Yeah, pretty much. And he has, by the way. He's already played more, because Anthony, now his thought process was it might take Richardson some time to ramp up. That didn't turn out to be the case, but bang, he's already injured, week 2. And as you mentioned, 19 to 23. Well, that's more he would have played here over the first 2 weeks. So
that's
working
true.
out for him.
But here's just a little hint to our boy Gardner, if he's watching this morning. And I hear he's a big Birds 365 fan, was a loyal streamer during his time here in Philadelphia. Next year, when you pick a team with a quarterback already in place. I know it's going to be a hit to your psyche that you don't think about number 2. You don't go to the bathroom because you don't think number 2. Because you did that in Jacksonville. That didn't pan out. You got replaced by Trevor Lawrence. You did that in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts developed into an MVP-type quarterback. You went to Indianapolis, and they said, yeah, you know what? Week 1, let's go with that Anthony Richardson kid, as green as he might be. Guess what? You're the backup again. Go somewhere this upcoming offseason where they've got an older quarterback, the unquestioned starter, so you are number 2. Sorry to tell you, Gardner, but the potential of injury is there, that you can step in and become their quarterback. Now, I know Richardson, you got a chance to play yesterday. Chances are he's walking into Shane Steichen's office at some point this afternoon and asking the same question he asked Nick Sirianni. What do I have to do to be the starting quarterback of the team? And Shane will give the same answer that Nick did. Not happening. Yeah. Sorry, Gardner, not happening. You're not going to be the starter, but thank you for yesterday's.
And I was talking about it a little bit with Zach Wilson. That's one of the things I like about Gardner Minshew. He's got this tremendous confidence that he probably shouldn't have. And I like that. I like it. Especially in a backup who, he's got some limitations, obviously. But he thinks he's a star. And I like that. Some other people may say it's not realistic. It's not realistic, but I guarantee you, if you're confident in yourself, you're going to play better than if you're not confident in yourself. So I think he gets a little bit more out of what he should because of that confidence.
Here's where you and I kind of agree, and where we'll part ways. Confidence is phenomenal. You need confidence. You can't be a winning quarterback in the National Football League without confidence. By the time you get to the National Football League, you shouldn't have to have your confidence propped up. You shouldn't have to have your coaches tell you how good you are and how great you'll be and the faith that they have in you. You should already be at that level by the time you make it to the National Football League.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about people propping you up. I'm talking about getting a player to the point where he's competent. That might be, getting him to the point where he understands the scheme, where he understands where the ball's supposed to go, where he understands the philosophy, and he's not thinking, and he's not, and all of a sudden it creeps in because he doesn't have success. Then it creeps into his psyche. It's not about rah, high school propping up a kid who can't play. It's about putting them in positions to where they're competent in what they're going to do. And I think a lot of teams don't do that with their quarterbacks. And some teams, starting with Andy Reid, and then I go down, some teams do it very well. Some organizations do it very well. And then it goes in. I think the Eagles are certainly top five-ish in that area. They're top five-ish in a lot of areas. But I think some of those bottom five teams, they can destroy young quarterbacks. And it's not about patting them on the back. It's about getting them competent in the offense and teaching them and making things, sort of second nature is what I'm talking about.
No, and I think there are some guys that just, no matter what coaching staff does with them, if you don't have certain capabilities, if you don't have it up here between the ears and your ability to do certain things, just not going to happen, no matter how
well. That's true. You got to be
skilled
mentally
you may
tough.
be in other areas.
You got to be mentally tough. From everybody on down, Patrick Mahomes gets criticized by some knuckleheads. Peyton Manning used to get criticized. Oh, you can't win. Aaron Rodgers can only win one Super Bowl. You got to be mentally tough because it doesn't matter how good you are. People are going to take shots at you constantly. So, that's built in. You got to be mentally tough to play in the NFL as a whole, but especially the quarterback position.
You have to have that toughness. Otherwise, you got no shot. He's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We'll come back. Put a bow on the show here on Bird Street 65.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365 coming down the home stretch. John, you said earlier in the show you didn't have the Eagles schedule yet for the week. Do you even have the Eagles schedule yet for today?
No.
Nick Sirianni's going to talk to you guys at some point virtually. You don't know what time it's going to be.
I do not, as of right now. Nothing official.
Okay.
Welcome to my life, Joe.
I am not going to suggest the questions you should ask because that's your job, and you only get the one shot. So you got.
Oh, no, I take it back. I have to apologize. It is 12:15. 12:15.
Okay, so the Eagles have sent you out. All right,
I have to apologize.
That's fine. So I'm not going to try and influence you in any way. I'm just going to ask you a question as to whether you think it will be asked or not. Will someone get to this? By the way, how much time you think Sirianni's going to give you?
15 minutes.
15. Okay. In that 15 minutes, will the question be asked, is Nicholas Morrow going to wear the green dot again this week? Last week, the week before, Drew Blankenship, after N'Kobe went out, had it. And last week, of course, they get Morrow elevated because Dean's out from the practice squad. Oh, by the way, he played pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm with you that Nicholas Morrow is a guy. If we're going to call Kaiser White from last year a guy, solid player, does the job, not going to wow anybody, but does his job. I'd say the same thing about Nicholas Morrow in the way that he played last week. Is he going to be the green dot guy, or do you think they'll go to Reed if he's back ready to go? It's usually a safety or a linebacker. Who do you think gets the dot with
Yeah, no, I don't think it will be asked because Nick's going to have the green dot. You know, when N'Kobe went down, you could have three. I think you could have three players designated to wear the communication device. Then they went to Christian Ellis, actually, and then Reed had it occasionally when they took Christian off the field. So it wasn't like he had it. He was sort of like the secondary guy. And that'll be the case again. Presumably he's going to be back. So if Nick isn't on the field, Nick Morrow, then he'll take over the green dot. But Nick Morrow will be the.
Do you think they just think linebackers are better suited to do that than safety?
Well, yes. I mean, traditionally that's the way it's done, but it's not like it has to be done that way. It's probably more. I think it's overrated. You know, that comes from my dealings with Jim Schwartz on the matter. Said, can they repeat what I say? That's basically the extent of the green dot. Now things have changed a little bit. If I saw a lot of movement, of correction, of back in the older days where middle linebackers would get defensive linemen lined up in the right gap, if there were, but everything's so structured now. It's like, all right, your nose, your shade, your 4-eye. There's not a lot of that. So it becomes just repeating the defensive call. And it could be Morrow. It could be N'Kobe. It could be Ellis. It could be Reed Blankenship. It could be Zach Cunningham. Zach Cunningham was a middle linebacker for a long time. So I think it's overrated to begin with. And yeah, Nick's going to be the guy. And when he's not on the field, it's going to be Reed then at that point.
Is what you're telling me, John McMullen, that the green dot guy is not allowed to audible out of 40 years in his...
No.
He better just repeat it verbatim as to what the defense coordinator tells him.
The days of audibilizing defenses are long gone.
That doesn't happen anymore. Not too many quarterbacks do it, so they sure as hell are not going to do it on the defensive side. All right, we'd be running out of time. We thank Jeff Kerr for hopping on board. We'll try and get you 2 good guests up tomorrow. Johnny Mac, we'll see if Nick or anything says anything of consequence. You don't think you're going to get an injury update today, do you?
I think he'll admit Avante's done for the season. I think he will admit that torn pec, but that's about it. Anything, week to week like Reed, he's not going to say anything.
Right, because if they want to, who'd you give us again to begin? I apologize. The elder slot corner who you like,
Chris Harris.
If they want to sign Chris Harris and get him in here, and actually this would be a good idea, get him in here and get him into the system ASAP. If you're gonna do something like that, if you're gonna do that, you're gonna have to announce that Maddox is at least going to IR. You could,
well, that'll happen Wednesday when they get back on the practice field. That he'll probably admit as I said, that Avante's out. They might put him on IR quicker, but they probably won't do it till Wednesday.
It all depends on if you're bringing in someone from outside the organization to either replace him or at least get in the line for who's going to be the slot corner for the Eagles going forward. All right, we're back here tomorrow to talk about that and all things Eagle as well. Johnny Mac, you're good to go, mañana?
Yeah, let's do it.
McMullen and McDonald back in 2-2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.